Several councils in England include been alerted they hazard fleeing out of cash money reserves if latter conducting continues. The regional by the government associate told councils florid system insufficient financing. The by the government told councils were accountable for operating their cash money reserves, cash detained behind for particular projects or emergencies, such as flood, are seen as an action of finance safety. Among them the 152 main councils in England had £14 billion in backup in March 2018, £500 more than rather than the year up but £400 less than rather than in 2015. The precautionary was relying on the newest information accessible, comparing reserves as of March 2018 in March 2015. The analyse reveals that 11 of the 152 main British councils include utilised so lot of their reserves with 2015 how SIPFA told they would run out during 4 persons year if conducting patterns extended. Advisor Richard Watts of the regional by the government associate told, several councils are cladding a selection among with reserves to try and pin financing gaps or future cut behind regional services in procedure to balance sheet the books. The is unstable and does anything to address the system insufficient financing how they person. Continuing financing gaps are just too big to be plugged by reserves. The information showed Northamptonshire Shire Justice written a 91% fall in reserves. The credibility was constrained to halt non-essential conducting for 2017-18. Thurrock Justice was shown to include consumable 58% of its reserves but insisted it was plan and the credibility was not fleeing out of cash. Somersetshire Justice told it was setting cash behind in its reserves following information showed a 73% drop. Croydon Justice emerging to include consumable more than rather than part of its reserves but told the by the government information was inexact and its reserves stay powerful. The Justice has requested for them to be fixed. Councils cannot adopt cash for date-to-date conducting so conduct reserves for sudden events or emergencies, such as flood. In Guide to Council SIPFA told, balance the yearly budgeting by figure on general reserves may be examined as a legal brief-term stock option. Yet, it is not usually reasonable for reserves to be developed to financial repeated cost. It tends how down there may be nice reasons for councils to include utilized reserves for plan conducting but added how extended exhaustion of reserves may be a mark of finance distress and creature incapable to supply a balance budgeting. Professor Tony Travers of the London High School of Economy told, we did see for lot councils reserves enlarged for 2017-18, but the blood pressure on budgets is not departure to go off and for several the requirement to do future use of reserves is departure to be inevitable. Emergencies can occur and flash increases in conducting can be necessary. Councils' requirement to be elastic or they end up in the stance Northamptonshire was in. Yet, they don't aware their financing stance of 1 year to the following. Councils told they person shortfalls in financing due to intermittent in by the government grants. Yet, those identified as possessing utilized a lot of their reserves insisted they were not fleeing out of cash money. Somersetshire Justice florid a budgeting gap of £28 above 3 year and announced intermittent to different services. It intends to put more than cash in reserves, achieving £19 by March 2020. It told the reserves it utilized turned on financing stipulated by the government to manage in harsh flood. Rotherham Justice told its reserves had not fall as lot as the by the government information showed, due to changes in account. A representative told, though the image is superior rather than is depicted there, we include yet had to use our reserves due to enlarged consumer demand on public thoroughness services above the recent few year, as the financing of centre by the government is not quite to supervise these expenses. Thurrock Justice told it was in of the powerful finance official position of any Unitarian credibility in England and had iced justice taxation. It told its reserves had stayed steady and it had utilised destined reserves as plan. Destined reserves do not present the justice's finance force in any way and to use them to propose differently is deceptive and wrong, told Vice Lead Advisor Shane Hebb. Croydon Justice told the figures in the by the government information were inexact and it had not run downward its reserves. It added, "We wait our finance to go on to stay steady and thinner." Drown-on-Trent Town Justice told auditors had no concerns to lift above its accounts and it was budget to growth reserves. Sutton Justice told its figures were of an overestimation and it had £33 meter in backup in 2018, not the pound in the by the government information. It added, "Reserves are vigorously controlled onto our review of hazard and program of job." Knowsley Justice told it had underfunded a pound retirement deficiency of reserves, but had planned to fill them above the following 2-year. Medway Justice told it had utilized reserves to lid and sudden quantity of industry rates appeals as a plan Society Hub program. Heath Jameson, text editor of the Public magazine, told councils had made an emergency work in compliance their books balance by cut personnel, alteration services and start business ventures, but it was no much longer quite. In spite history policy blood pressure to run downward reserves to pay for services, any justice in a audio finance schedule is potential to conduct cash in backup, she told. Time public health services can spend too much or go bosom. Councils are juridically required to balance sheet their books and lack to hold several cash money for emergencies is a hazard. How largest are not readily to get yet, the blood pressure on budgets is manufacturing it more hard to conduct cash money in reserves. The Institution for Financial Teaching told in spite increases in justice taxation, regional authorities had done significant intermittent to defend age public thoroughness and families services. Political economist Neil Amines Blacksmith told, each councils will include to halt provided several of the services how they now ensure, center by the government grant financing will include to be de-introduced, or councils will include to be taking into account accessing to further source of income. A by the government representative told the year's regional by the government financial community turned on additional financing for regional services. He told, councils are democratically selected bodies accountable for manufacturing their own finance decisions and operating their asset. All regional authorities are required to conduct adequate undistributed reserves to encounter sudden finance risks. He told regional by the government had accessing to pound in 2019 to 20.